Hi everyone, welcome to episode 22 of SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. As always, I'd encourage you to hit that subscribe button and the little bell notification here on the channel. That way you'll be notified whenever we release a new episode of the show. And as always, it's really nice to know where you are all joining us from today. So give us a little shout out in the comments box. Let us know where you're joining from. It's always nice to see people letting us know that. So without further ado, I'm going to see if our guest is here. Someone I've been really looking forward to having on the show. Someone I've known for many years now and has been a great friend and ambassador of us here at SmugMug. So let's see, Ben Von Wong, are you with us today?
Hello.
Hello, sir.
I think I'm here.
You are indeed. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I am great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. What?
I was happy to be here.
Yeah. What part of the world do we find you in today?
Today I am in lockdown in Montreal, Canada.
Montreal, Canada. Yeah.
Back in the room that I went to university in. So it's like being in a time machine.
A little bit of deja vu going on there, is there?
A little bit. It's as if I never grew up and I came right back home.
So is that your family home?
It is. I'm back with family. My sister is giving birth in a couple weeks. And so when things started getting really serious at the end of February, I kind of made a choice to go like, all right, where am I going to go and hole up? I think it was more like mid-March, not end of February. Yeah, mid-March is when things started getting serious. And I was like, okay, let's just go back home. My mom was getting really nervous because I am a little bit risk prone as opposed to risk averse. and this just was the thing that made the most sense.
Yeah. But you had, it wasn't an easy trip to get home though. I remember seeing your various social comments about the fairly epic journey you had to get back home, because let's kind of go back to, I guess, was it last year that you kind of packed things up in San Francisco and decided to go nomadic, shall we say?
Yeah, at the end of January, I just like moved out of my place, and the plan was to go nomadic for the year and figure out where to settle down. Obviously, the worst year to plan to go nomadic. And so I actually found myself in Australia when the stuff started getting more serious, and I had a 6-week trip planned and just ended up cutting it short by 2. I think it was when Tom Hanks and the NBA shut down and Canada started calling it citizens' home, and insurance decided to like send out a message saying like, if you're in any of these hot zones, your travel insurance is going to be invalid in like 14 days. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should think about where I'm going to go hole up for this thing. And so I embarked on a little bit of an adventure. To start off with, like booking flights was quite difficult because the flights kept getting canceled. So you'd buy a ticket for like, I don't know, Thursday. And then it was like, nope, that flight doesn't exist anymore. Sorry, you got to buy another one. So you just like cancel it and purchase another one. And then even while I was in the airplane mid-flight between Australia and Australia and San Francisco, the next my kind of connecting flight got canceled while I was in the air. So then I landed and I was like, all right, where do I go from here? I think while most people would find it stressful, I just found it a little bit entertaining. I mean, how often do we get to travel in a pandemic? So it just added like a flavor of uniqueness to the whole thing. And it was weird, but not like uncomfortable. So I think I'm fairly lucky there. I didn't have like the ridiculous 4 or 6 hour like sardine packed lineups or anything like that I had to put up with.
I thought it was going to be kind of ironic that after having packed up in San Francisco and headed to Australia, on your way back to Canada, you almost got stranded back in San Francisco again. That would have been...
That was true. That almost did happen. But I mean, there was really no practical place to stay because no one wants to host you after you've gotten off an airplane. It's just like a petri dish, right? So like, yeah, and like there are all these self-quarantine rules now in place. I actually think the US doesn't have these, but in Canada you have to mandatorily quarantine yourself for 14 days after you get back. So it seems sensible.
Yeah, we have that in the UK. If you come in on any flight into the UK, you have to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah, but that's only because Boris got the coronavirus, so now he's a little bit more sensible about it. But prior to that, like, he didn't really care, did he?
Yeah, let's not get into politics. It's maybe a road we don't want to go down. Or maybe we do. No. Do we want to? I'm not sure. I think people can make up their own minds. It's getting played out pretty evidently, what's happening in our political world. But yeah, at the moment, obviously here in Scotland, we're still on a fairly tight lockdown. Things are looking better, but we're not opening up quite as fast as some of the other parts of Europe are. I'm desperate to get back to the US, back to headquarters, but at the moment, I'm not convinced that's going to happen in the near future. But I'm also not sure how desperate I am to get back in, as you said, a petri dish, back on a plane. So
yeah,
that's going to be interesting. So you went to Australia. What was the plan when you went to Australia? So, let's put the cards on the table. It's all gone to pot, right? It's everything you had planned for this year got completely stopped. So, but what was that plan when you left San Francisco?
Oh, I actually started off in Tucson, Arizona, and floated through Toronto and Waterloo, and this year was going to be about wandering, right? It was sort of this idea of chasing my curiosity. I think I came to the realization that, so I'm an extrinsically inspired person. I get my motivation when I when I meet new people, and I have new ideas, and I realized that when I was at home stuck in one place, I generally tend to become a creature of habit. Like, I'll just kind of introvert a lot more, and I won't be going out seeking opportunities. Whereas in contrast, when I travel and I go to a conference and I'm meeting people, like, I'm super dialed in and I'm trying to seize every opportunity, because you're only in a certain place for a specific amount of time. And so everything is an opportunity. And I just wanted to see what it would be like if I spent my year just flipping that around and saying, okay, well, what happens if I just spend 100% of my time being dialed in and see where that landed me? Australia specifically, was just to go hang out with my girlfriend. I mean, sure. Anna and I have a long distance relationship. We've been together cross-continentally for 5 years, and our entire relationship depends on sort of travel, because that's where we meet up in the middle of other countries, and that whole part has been taken off. But what the opportunity was for me while in Australia was just like, oh, let's go out and meet different people and gain different perspectives. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was nomadic early in February, and it was super revealing. I asked her, how do you decide what to do with your time when no one is telling you what to do and where to go, when you have no financial constraints, when you're able to get work wherever you go? Like, how do you decide what to do? And she said that she uses two things. The first is the principle of ikigai, which is the combination of what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for. And that I had already heard. Mm-hmm. But the second was one that I hadn't heard before, which is, what does your ideal work week look like? Like, how do you want to spend your time? Like, what do you do? And I realized that what I actually really love doing is having unexpected, deep conversations with people who are smarter than me about whatever they happen to be really interested in. Mm-hmm. And so I started thinking, like, okay, how can I foster more opportunities and more of these conversations? And the answer for that was a podcast. So I actually, even prior to COVID, had started up on this idea of a podcast, except my podcast was going to be the excuse for me to meet people while traveling.
Right.
And so I bought myself an entire setup, a Rodecaster, this headset, and I was just traveling around, like, meeting people and then dragging them onto my podcast if I felt like there was any synergy. And then now it's sort of ironically become the probably the most exciting thing that I have going on right now. It's the most consistent piece of inspiration that I have, the most organic way to generate serendipity on my own, the most interesting way to build connections in a field that I'm particularly curious in, and that's the field of impact. I think that, many people look at what I do, which is photography or art or video, depending on like how you discover me. People look at my work and they only see the end product. But so much of like what it takes in order to get to the end product are like these endless conversations with people in order to better understand the system that I'm serving, right? And so I think everyone wants to make the world a better place, but nobody knows how, or they don't know where to start. They don't know how they fit in. They don't know how their skills apply. And so similarly, I'm in a world where I don't know how I fit in. The work that I do is very weird. It's very different. It's very unique. And not that many people are willing to pay for it. So that exploration that I'm having is something that I thought would be super interesting to share with the world. And so the podcast is called Impact Everywhere, which explores positive impact in unexpected places. And there's everything from Oscar-winning filmmakers to social entrepreneurs. I have a human trafficking survivor coming on later. Impact investors. It's really all over the place, just to show how possible it is to make a difference, right? Increase the funnel, make it easier for people to realize that the world can be a really interesting and exciting place, and look at all the different ways and manifestations that impact can happen.
It's, we have to go back to 2012, I think it was, when we first started working together. I think that was around that time. And your description of what you do and what you achieve and the impact you have, it's changed quite a bit since then. When I first met you, you were a photographer who was a creative photographer who was making viral videos. That was really our kind of introduction to you. And here we are 8 something years later, and you would describe yourself very differently now, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a lot harder to describe myself, but like, even when we first met, I wasn't just taking photos for myself. I was taking photos and I was making videos and I was trying to share that with the world.
Right.
I was trying to inspire others. I was trying to give back. And so there's always been this component of trying to positively impact my community and the people around me and to inspire people to pursue what they want to do. And initially it started off as educational photography, right? Like I was doing a lot of tutorials. I was teaching people how to light, what kind of camera I used, how I used it, how I was traveling, what I was doing, how you put together a photo shoot. And it was sort of this idea of like, well, how can I just share my passion with the world? Because I'm a child of the internet. I learned because other people put content on the internet. And it was just it just made so much sense to like contribute back to the community that you were part of. And I think that had always being interesting to me. Over time, I started to realize that if you're in the photography market to sell tutorials, right? If you're in the educational photography market, the better you become at something, the more specialized you get, and the smaller your market segment is.
Right.
And so if you look at photography, the business model, it actually doesn't really make sense to become really, really great at photography. It makes a lot more sense to be a really, really solid generalist that's keeping up with trends and gear and doing reviews and just like staying at the really like rudimentary level. And that just wasn't interesting to me. And as I started getting better at what I did, I started to realize this paradox. And so I started shifting my own interest into saying, okay, well, if photographers aren't going to hire photographers and the only way I can really earn money that way is do workshops, there's got to be something more. And that's where I started seeking virality, because how else to get people to discover you than to be discoverable?
Right.
And so this idea of trying to think about how do I create things that can be seen outside of the photography community really kickstarted me down this path where my content became super marketing focused. Like, how is it possible for you to describe a photograph in just words, right? Because if you're not able to describe it in a photograph, then a journalist is never going to open up the email. Sorry, if you're not able to describe the photograph in words, then that headline in an email header is never going to be opened by a journalist. It's not going to, like, no one's going to click on the link if the headline isn't interesting.
Yep.
So you kind of need to like absorb all these skills in order to get discovered. And then one thing led to another. But you kind of, I think as you go down this path, after you've reached people, after your content has been seen by many people, and after you've achieved some form of notoriety, it sort of begets the question, well, what is all this for? Is it just so that I can get richer and do more projects so that I can get richer and then I can do more projects? Like, just creativity for the sake of creativity was never something that really struck me as a destination that I really wanted to get to. So it's always been about something more,
Right.
and that more has eventually led to where I am today.
Yeah. And so I once said to you, you've reinvented yourself several times, but actually, I did you a discredit. You haven't reinvented yourself. You've always been about this impact, right? It's just how you're doing that has went on a journey and changed to meet the needs of the place you are at this time. So, it's it's not been a reinvention. It's just been that foundation of trying to make an impact and then finding places that need your skill set to do that. Would that be a more better way to describe the last 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think your reinvention concept was necessarily flawed. I mean, the only constant in life is change.
Right.
If you're not evolving and growing, that's the problem. So it's sort of expected for us to grow and evolve and change with the times and adapt to our needs. And so I think one thing that I've been phenomenally good at, though, is self-sabotaging. So, back in 2014 when we first met, it would have been the perfect time to like double down on like YouTube and create tutorials because that was the market for it.
Yeah.
And I was just not interested. So I said, nah, no, I'm going to try this other thing. And then I got pretty good at this other thing. And I started getting these big commercial jobs where, I was working with advertising agencies to create campaigns that were really impossible. And then I was like, no, that's not for me. I want to go do impact stuff. So then I just like, switched again. And then even as I started figuring out like impact photography, I was like, I don't think this is going to work out. I'm going to change again. I'm going to go and focus on art installations instead. And so I just like, I'm really good at changing directions before I actually figure out how to capitalize on it. And it's conscious. And the reason for it is that I'm very apprehensive about earning money, like relying on money earned from something that I no longer enjoy doing. And I think I see this often in influencers where they get pigeonholed into a genre, whether they like it or not, and they can't escape it because now they have their entire life and business and routine and relationships and everything is built on this identity that no longer resonates true with them, but they can't escape it because it's a business. It's no longer their life. And I just never wanted to be in that situation of having these golden handcuffs. And so I don't know, like it would be good to actually like grow up a little. But I just have never been that way. And maybe in the future, who knows?
Grown ups hugely overrated, I must say. But could are you someone that gets bored easily? Is that maybe why, like, once you've done something and achieved it, you want to move on to the next thing before you've commercialized it?
Yes, I definitely don't like doing the same thing multiple times
Mm-hmm.
because then there's no more challenge, there's no more growth. However, I have done the same thing multiple times when I perceive the necessary impact in it. I think at its core, though, what I aspire is to become the most effective
Right.
person that I can be, right? And so when I see that something no longer works or resonates and I feel like I can't be effective at the thing that I'm trying to do, then I change strategies. So I'm actually just in a constant state of recalibrating, checking in with myself, seeing if the hypothesis that I wanted to test out, is it work? Does it not work? Like, for example, when I decided to shift from temporary art installations, so basically building sets for my big epic photographs,
Yep.
to building art installations, the hypothesis was, well, if I build an art installation and I build a physical experience, there'll be more money there because people pay more for physical things, and that physical thing that I build could then travel, and then I
Mm-hmm.
could actually make like royalties on it in the same way that an image licensing would make royalties on it, and the cause that I'm raising awareness for could continue raising awareness for indefinitely for so long as this thing travels, right?
Yep.
Sounds like a good hypothesis. So I go ahead and I build the world's tallest closet in Egypt for an event. And, we spend 5 days, we collect 3,000 items of clothing, we build a 10-meter tall closet, and that's it. And then now we're like, okay, well, how do we like make this thing travel? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a logistical nightmare. Like, I'm not a logistics company. I can't figure out how to tear this thing down, move it to another country, set it back up, and who's going to pay for it? Like, it was an entire different business model that I actually wasn't ready to tackle. So it was like, oh, well, maybe I could have thought about it before doing it. But at the end of the day, I did something cool.
Yep.
And then I also learned the power of photographs, because at the end of the day, once this installation was over, all I have to show for it is the photos. And it just reminded me of the power of photography. So I didn't like photography because I was like, I take the picture, I destroy my sets, and there's nothing left. Yes, but there is also a photograph that's left. And the photo...
Oh, I think Ben has frozen a little bit.
Power in my building just went out.
Your power went out? We can still hear you, Ben.
Amazing.
I will fill some time until we get Ben back on the call. Looks like, yeah, I'll fill for you. He's saying give him a second. He's just dealing with I think it was a power outage or something he's had there. So, actually, this is episode 22, and I'm surprised something like this hasn't happened. I think we can still hear you actually, Ben. So this is episode 22, and I'm surprised for those of you that are viewing that this hasn't happened before. We had Jerry Vanderwaal on the show from South Africa a few weeks ago, and he was concerned that this was going to happen during the live stream for him, because they have real problems with their power outage and stuff in South Africa. But we got through that one, although his internet was not great. And today we are dealing with a power outage in Ben von Wong's house. So we will be back hopefully pretty soon with Ben. If not, we will find a way to reschedule something. But yeah, while we're waiting, just let us know where you are. As always, as I say, it's great to have some idea where you're all viewing from, and if you can share some questions while you're listening to the rest of the stream, that's always really useful, and I'll ask those to Ben once we get him back online. Next week we have 2 episodes lined up. Next week on Tuesday we have the wonderful Richard Terborg joining us from Amsterdam, a wonderful fashion photographer and dear friend of SmugMug. And then on Thursday, we have Gavin Hardcastle, a wonderful landscape photographer based out in Vancouver, and he will be joining us next week on Thursday. And we're constantly adding guests to the schedule, which we update on our blog, and you can find out all about those at the smugmug.com/the lens, where our blog is. Let's see, how are we getting on, Ben? Can you hear me? You're back. Okay, let's see.
Can you see me?
I don't think I have an image. No, we can hear you.
All right. Now you're going to see the extreme downgrade in the visuals.
Let's see. No, we're still just, we're not getting anything. So what happened? Did you complete power failure?
Complete power failure. Everything's shut down right now. I don't know what happened.
So what are you running on? We've got your picture back. I guess you're on your webcam now.
Yeah, you're on my laptop, and so I have some power, but everything just disconnected. Monitor off, roadcaster off, camera off.
So you're just running from laptop battery?
Yeah, just from laptop. So we should be able to get through this.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go.
The timing, amazing.
Good fun. This is the fun of live, right? You just never know what's going to happen. And hey, the fact, look, we're still live. You're still on screen. It's great.
Just roll with it.
You've got to roll with it. Listen, you of all people are the master of rolling with it, and coming up with solutions and engineering solutions. And this is just another one of those little things that you've had to deal with. You were in the middle of talking about creating these big installations, like the closet with. Was it a lifetime's worth of clothing? Was that the theme?
Yeah, that was one lifetime worth of clothing, because we don't really realize how many clothes we buy because we throw them out as we go, as we grow older, as we go bigger, as we change styles. And the result is, well, the result is like a lot of clothing worn, and clothing has like a really big environmental impact. And so we just wanted to find a way to capture the magnitude of how much waste is generated. But yeah, the original idea was to like, have it travel, and that didn't work out. So now it's, so yeah, I think it was just a pretty enlightening sort of reminder that the power of photography is that it's new for anyone who's never seen it before, and that ultimately it lasts forever. And so even though I might want to go down this installation route, which made a lot of sense pre-COVID when everyone was investing in experiences,
Yeah.
That ultimately, no matter what, you always have to have a really good record of it, because otherwise it's always going to disappear. So photography has a ton of value, that I think is super important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how, last time we were talking about some of your installations, and we were thinking, how could we maybe incorporate them into, a SmugMug event if, we haven't done the typical trade show experience for many years, but was there a way to create a kind of installation that people could visit and obviously ultimately learn about our brand? But that whole world has just completely disappeared. I don't foresee many trade shows happening this year, and indeed many of them maybe might not come back. So definitely having to change. We were going to get you to share some images of those installations, but we might be tempting fate if we're struggling with the
I think I can do that.
You think you can do that? It'd be cool to see some of those big installations that you were talking about. I know there was quite a few that you did. Obviously the closet. Now, you're saying we're not aware of how many clothes we wear in a lifetime because we throw away so clothes. That's unless it's me and you, Ben, because you and I just wear the same branded shirts all the time. So
that is true.
A very limited closet here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just load my website, because that'll be the best place to see a number of these different installations. It's so much harder to do this when you only have one computer screen. But let's go for it. Let me know when you see my very, very messy computer.
Yeah, let's see. I should be able to monitor that in this other screen.
Is it working?
No, not yet.
No. All right. I am attempting to share my screen.
Don't think it's working.
Didn't work?
Nope.
Oh.
You just have to imagine it.
It says sharing though, so I'll try one more time. Yeah, sharing application window. I've selected the right application.
Yeah. I wonder if we should very quickly get you to hang up and dial back in, because I'm seeing some. Oh, hang on. I think. Oh, there you go. It suddenly came through. Maybe it's just super delayed. Let's see.
Cool.
Right. It does have. I can't actually see the whole screen. There's a big sort of dark grey charcoal box in front of it. I don't think it's quite working correctly.
Yeah, I can dial back in.
Yeah, why don't you very quickly
All right.
dial back in, and then we'll see if we can take it from there. So we're just going to let Ben dial out and dial back in, and hopefully that should make the connection a little bit better. Right.
I wonder if it's the byproduct of when you switch monitors, you go from a 2-monitor setup to a 1-monitor setup, it gets really confused.
Yep.
All right, how's this?
That's good. You just need to hide my my screen.
Do I press the X?
There we go. Yeah, you can press that X. Yeah.
All right, cool.
There we go. Okay,
right.
We can see your screen, and we've got you in the bottom left, so we can still see you as well. That's cool. Yeah. So let's look at some of these installations. Where do you want to start? We don't need to start with the closet. We can maybe do them in an order that...
Oh yeah, the closet isn't even here. I've done so many projects that they just don't really fit in on a single website, which is kind of funny of a situation to be in. I guess maybe I can just show this one, which is we created an installation out of 168,000 plastic straws that were collected over the course of 9 months to raise awareness for plastic pollution.
Yep.
This ended up being a Guinness World Record, and it was built in a mall in Vietnam with the help of like thousands of volunteers that were just streaming through the mall, and they just come in and like help us out. And it was basically a bunch of straws just stuck on pieces of plastic that were hanging on fishing wires to so that the entire installation could glow, and created one of these pieces. And so the installation was seen by like 100,000 people, and it was up in the mall for a good 6 weeks. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the only thing that we have to show for it left right now, as I'm doing this presentation, are the photographs.
Right.
And so it's just a really funny thing to it doesn't really matter that like these installations, for example, were temporary, but the power of the images are still eternal. And so I think there's something to be said about that, especially moving forward. Now, I think one of the challenges is like, you create these photographs, but like, how do you measure the impact that it has on somebody? And that's the part that I have been really deeply questioning and wanting to try to design better for. And it's actually the theme of the podcast, which is like, how do you understand what impact is? How do you measure it? How do you quantify it? How do you make sure that you're being an effective person when you design it? Because I think too often we think about art, the role of art is to touch people's heart. But if you stop there, then art can never do more.
Yeah.
It can never go one step further to actually like affecting policy, for example. And so I've tried a number of different things, like I don't know if we want to stay on the installation track here, but like when I did this project where we tied a model underwater with sharks swimming around, we managed to get 80,000 petition signatures to support the creation of a shark sanctuary in Malaysia. And so it's like attempts at trying to figure out how do you connect an image with a cause, and how do you then take that cause and measure its effectiveness. And so like this image hit the front page of Reddit 3 times. It got a lot of traction, but it's still really, really hard to be able to claim ownership of any kind of change that happens in the world. So I don't know, a lot of big questions that I ask that have nothing to do with the final result. I think many times, like when I build installations, so here's another one of these installations where we put 18,000 plastic cups together to create these like crystal caves. Same thing. The installation was up for 6 weeks. A ton of people built it. Like everyone just wants to know, like, oh, how did you do the installation?
They're missing
but
the
that's only
message.
half of the story. Yeah, I think they're missing the depth behind it. And so, for me, I believe that art has a power to navigate between worlds. Right, art sits on the intersection of worlds. It gets you access to the peasants and the kings. You can speak to anyone, and you can speak directly to their heart, regardless of culture or language. Yet artists don't have a seat at the table, right? We're just seen as someone who creates a product. Even within the advertising world, you get brought into the picture, and all you're expected. Oh, I got power again. All you're expected to do is execute the idea that a bunch of creative directors theoretically thought up, and who knows why. So I don't know. I struggle with it a lot.
So you were talking there about trying to measure the impact, which is one of the big things you want to work on. That also has an impact on getting work, right? If you can't prove the impact that you're having, that you're making a difference, then it's how do you convince someone to hire you to do an installation or to create one of these projects? It's a difficult square to circle.
Yeah, I mean, most people only, once again, they just focus on the numbers. They're like, oh, you have this many million followers, or you have this many million views. We're going to hire you to do a viral thing. But that's not the point. That's only the quantitative output of what I've done, but it only speaks to the breadth of impact. It doesn't talk about the depth of impact. And in a world where you can A/B test a meme to figure out which one converts better, why bother spending money on an artist to create something artistic? It's for way more than actually just creating like a piece of content, right?
Yeah.
Like there has to be more than that. So
yeah, because
I don't know. I have a lot to say about this.
I know, and that's why I invited you on here. We want to hear what you have to say. I guess what you're in a nutshell, there's no point having 2 million people see it if 2 million people don't care, right?
Exactly. Exactly. If you're just getting views that don't drive action, or what if all the views that you have are just preaching to the choir? What if none of those views that you're creating are actually leading to the change that you're trying to have? Then you're not being effective. You're just being a good marketer, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I can see you're trying to get your camera back online here. So
I am.
I've just
I'm so
switched.
bothered by how ugly my webcam is.
I've switched back to my camera just now while you mess about with that. You can tell he's a little bit of a perfectionist, as our Ben. You can tell he wasn't happy with
My
just how.
webcam's too ugly.
Yeah, I think I got you back. There you go. Got you back on
There you go.
back on the nice camera. Question here that came in specifically back to the closet that you built from Michael, who's watching. Thanks for the question. You were talking about your initial plan was to build this big closet and then travel that kind of installation around. And he says, wouldn't that be somewhat contradictory of having an installation about environmental impact to then try and move it around the world and have more environmental impact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything is a trade-off, right? So you try, the most effective thing to do as an environmentalist is to die, right? To cease to exist, you would produce the least amount of waste possible. But if you assume that ultimately this is a balance that you have to strike, if that's something that you believe in, then it becomes about how can you have a marginally proportional impact. So if we think about how a single T-shirt, the amount of water a single T-shirt uses is 3,000 gallons of water, and we think about the environmental footprint of that single T-shirt, and then you think about how many T-shirts a single person purchases over the course of their lifetime, and then you think about how many people you might affect as a result of creating this installation, you have to do a kind of mental calculation there and say, actually, I think I can do more harm than good. It's a hypothesis, right? But the alternative is to do nothing. So I totally hear you, and I think it's a totally valid question. And I try to approach it through the lens of saying, well, I'm going to try my best to do the best that I can. I don't know if I'm going to be successful, but I'm going to try anyways. And I think that's just how I've decided to choose my life, and I'm aware of it, and I'm conscious of it, and I'm asking the questions. And I think the secondary benefit of it is the fact that people like Michael are asking these questions are actually a really good thing, right? When someone looks at my installation, they go like, oh, well, what are you doing with all the straws at the end of it? And I'm like, well, that's the problem. There's nowhere to put these straws. That becomes a part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
Because now I get the chance to say, well, why are you so concerned about this one installation? This only represents what happens, every minute of every day in one city. Why are you so concerned about what's happening here? If you're concerned about it, think about the bigger picture. Don't get caught up on the details, right? This is one instance of the whole thing. And I, as an artist and a project manager, will try to do my best to get rid of the material to the best of my ability. That's my responsibility. But the fact of the matter is you're trying to provoke conversations.
Yep, which you have done. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, Ben. Could you just move your cursor? Actually, you just did it. Your cursor was right over your face.
Oh.
But you've moved it. That's good.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What's great is, Michael, you've just shown that you're aware that there is an issue of traveling, moving stuff around. Wasn't that long ago, we wouldn't have even hesitated to move that stuff around, wouldn't even have thought about the impact. So the fact that people are aware that there's a negative side is fantastic. And now we're having this conversation about what to do. And what's great is Michael's actually come back with a suggestion. He says, well, maybe instead of moving it, why don't you recreate it in different places rather than ship it around, which is,
the idea wasn't to ship the clothes around either. And the truth is, like that installation specifically have very few parts that could have traveled. So most of it would have to be recreated, but it encounters the exact same problem, which is that's like a logistical nightmare. You need to build a unique team for every city or country you plan on rebuilding everything in, which means that ultimately you're just redoing a new project every time. You're not really recycling the same project. And so it doesn't scale well is actually the problem.
Yeah. And you get questions about, Mahal, you used all those straws. What are you going to do with them at the end? People kind of miss the fact that these were all used straws that you had prevented from going to waste prior to using them in the installation. Cleaned them all, utilized them, and it's a fraction. I mean, it's a tiny fraction of the number of straws that are discarded every day. But then to highlight the fact that I want to do something with them, I can't. There's nowhere to put them. So there's so many layers to that message, and the fact that people are waking up to it, I guess, was the point, right?
Yeah. But, as with all movements, it all matters about the social context. So doing plastic projects over the last 2 years was actually really timely because there was a lot of momentum behind the movement. So it was time to continue applying pressure and convert the public opinion into corporate action. And so that was the field where I felt like I was the most effective, where I was able to stand up and contribute. Now, as we move forward, thanks to COVID-19, thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, the conversation has completely shifted. So we're not going to be talking about plastics, not in the way that we used to, anytime in the near future. And I think it's important to be aware of the ebbs and flows of society to be able to tailor your messaging to get the results that you're looking for. Because ultimately, we're storytellers and we need to be responsive to the audience who we're telling stories to. And so I don't think the climate conversation is going to go away. I think it's going to completely shift. It's going to talk about marginalized communities, about the inequalities of how climate will affect different people. And as a storyteller, it's so important to always be aware of all of these shifts to try to capitalize on the opportunities and figure out how you're going to fit in.
Yeah. And it's interesting how current situations can shift that conversation so quickly. We were, that straw project was sponsored by probably a brand most people were surprised to be involved. It was Starbucks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, someone we looked at as part of the problem, should we say, and then they got involved in that project. And we're seeing all this momentum. I mean, I've got a family, and until recently, when we were out, straws are no longer a standard issue thing. There's definitely been a change, but now that COVID has happened, as you say, the world has shifted its whole vision, and suddenly I start seeing things creeping back into use because
Oh, yeah, for sure. Look at the takeout economy.
yeah, because it helps with the issue we currently have, which the biggest issue, which is COVID. I went and collected our shopping from a superstore recently, and the number of plastic bags they used to do a kind of no-touch delivery was ridiculous. And we have a mountain of plastic bags over the last 3 months that I'll have to find something to do with. We wouldn't have used those had COVID not come around. So it's really switched the story in a completely different direction. There's definitely been benefits. I mean, the lack of travel, the lack of fuel that's been burned in vehicles has definitely had a beneficial impact, but we've slipped into old solutions to benefit the current situation. So the story and the topics are constantly changing and can change so quickly. Staying on top of it is
Yeah.
the trick, right?
Well, not to be a Debbie Downer, but global carbon emissions only went down by 4% as a result of the slowdown, which is pretty tiny and below the targets that we would actually need if we were to hit a 2050 deadline anyways. So even the entire world stopping doesn't put us on track to hit the Paris Accord climate goals. So it's all pretty depressing, actually, if you spend too much time in the impact space.
Yeah, and the number of plastic bags I've used in the last 3 months have probably negated that small decrease in the carbon footprint. But I will find a solution for all those plastic bags before this thing is over. What's next? So we spoke about this episode as being talking about creativity and positivity. So we started talking just very slightly there about, looking at some of the negative impacts. But you have told me recently you still have a very positive outlook into the future for Ben Von Wong, correct?
Well, I choose to be positive about the situation that I happen to be in, which I think is a slight nuance difference.
Right.
Because we get the chance to tell our own story to ourselves, and that has, I think, a lot of power in terms of how we navigate the world. So I could be agonizing how I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of jobs this year and currently like stuck staying at home with my parents, or I could think about how, oh, this could be like a really interesting opportunity for me to spend more time with family and to start exploring not what I want to do in 1 or 2 years, but where I want to be in 10 years and how I can position myself to be in that situation later. And so I think that perspective plays a big role. And that's probably the only thing we have control of is our own perspective. Like the world's doing whatever the world's going to do. Turn on the news every day, some big dramatic shift is happening. But we can control our own perspective and our own power of how we choose to navigate that. And I think that's a really important nuance and detail to remember. And so in my case, I've just decided to, lean into the fact that nothing is happening right now, that my entire career as I know it is gone. It's not coming back anytime soon. Like global travel is not coming back anytime soon. Mm-hmm. Global events aren't coming back anytime soon. The big jobs and campaigns that I was doing aren't coming back anytime soon. So who am I without my story? Who am I if I am not what I create? And I don't have the answers, but those are the questions I'm asking. And I think it's a unique opportunity to do that. And by doing things like my podcast, where I'm falling back in love with the process of doing something rather than the outcome or the output. So how many views it's got or how many petition signatures I got. No, it's not about that. It's just about doing something that I'm enjoying and that I feel is generating value. And the enoughness of that is actually quite refreshing. So I think that's sort of the positivity. And then, the funny thing about exploration and following your curiosity is that you actually pick up skills that you never know when can be useful. So I guess I could share my maternity photo shoot here.
Yes, absolutely.
I did.
This because you haven't been sitting at home trying to think what to use. You've been pretty creative, and that was definitely one of the things we wanted to pick up on today. So
can you see my screen? No, you can't see my screen.
Not yet. But why don't you give it? What's a little background to this before we show it? So you mentioned you one of the reasons you wanted to get back to Canada was because your sister was due a baby, correct?
Yeah, my sister's due. She's gonna be pregnant, and so we were looking for different ways to take pictures because I am the resident photographer of the house, which means I'm responsible for taking pictures. Is it sharing?
You're sharing me, so you need to hide.
Okay,
myself.
Perfect.
Yep. At the moment, it's just you that's on screen. I'll switch back once you're ready to present.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So I ended up creating an entire series. I don't know. So my sister is pregnant, and as a resident photographer, I needed to find a way to take photos of her. And so, my sister is quite adventurous. For her maternity photo shoots, we actually, for her marriage, we hung her off the edge of a building. The edge of a cliff with her husband. And so we've always tried to do really adventurous, crazy, kooky things. And this time around, there's just no opportunity to do anything weird or crazy. And my mom really still wanted us to do a photo series and had discovered some stuff, she had discovered that corn really started looking like skyscrapers. And so the idea that you could use small fruits and vegetables in order to create these alternative worlds was something that she thought was really interesting. And so we ended up, together with my mom, we did a photo shoot of my sister in all these different poses, and ended up taking a really cute or I think cute series of photos of this maternity photos that haven't really been done in this way before.
So
So
your mum looking at fruit and vegetable led to this really unique maternity shoot. That's kind of cool. So it became a full family like show, right? The whole family's involved in the maternity shoot. That's pretty awesome.
yeah. The whole thing became like a total family adventure, and I documented the whole thing because I was like, if we're gonna do this thing anyways, and I make a behind the scene video for every project that I do.
Yeah.
I thought that it would be particularly interesting to figure out like, oh, maybe I can try to hack TikTok and see what happens because I thought that this content in particular was going to be the perfect style of content for TikTok.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this piece got 3.5 million views on TikTok. We showed up on the
Hang
evening
on.
news
You want me
in
to
Canada.
let me? Your screen's now coming through. Why don't I share it? So if you want to go back to those
To the
images,
photos.
yeah, we missed those. There we go. So there
Yes.
is the maternity shoot.
Yeah. So on the left is a set made out of pomegranates,
Right.
and they're leaning on wine bottles, and you can see my mom kind of being the assistant on the lower left, and the photos were just taken like the place that they're renovating their place, so we just had this like big white wall and these torn up floors as the place where we just went and shot photographs. And then on the right is another example of the shots that we did was these stand up paddleboard shots, which is my sister loves going paddleboarding.
Yep.
So we made stand up paddleboards out of mango and dragon fruit, and just little. There's a slab of aluminum foil. That was my mom's idea too, to create the reflection in the water, aluminum foil with water. And so it just ended up being like an entire little family adventure to figure out, how to take these photos that we had taken, cut them out, and make them into an actual series of images that, make for really cute memories.
Yeah. Looks like they're paddleboarding through the mangrove swamps. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cool. Who enjoyed it the most? Your sister, your brother-in-law, your mother, you,
I think my mom,
your mum?
definitely my mom. Yeah. She
Yeah.
got to exercise her creativity, and my mom's really great. My mom's like a kid who never grew up. Her creativity doesn't. She can't really tell the difference between a good idea and a bad idea. She just has ideas,
Right.
and it's really generative. Like sometimes it gets tiring, but like she'll always be trying new things, and sometimes those things come up. Like they sometimes work, and they're wonderful. So, no, it's been great.
That was a great lesson there, right? Just keep trying. One of these days,
Hmm?
it's going to be great. You also tried to make your mum famous during lockdown, right? Was it?
Yeah, I started a Instagram account for my mom, and she's at almost like 400 followers now. And all I did was like take screenshots of the conversations between the two of us.
That's right. Every time she was bringing you meals, because you were kind of quarantined in your own house for a while, right? Because you had been traveling. So
Yeah, I was quarantined in my own house. I wasn't allowed out of my room, and didn't want to get my parents affected. So yeah, my mom was delivering meals to me, and we were bantering back and forth on WhatsApp, and just started screenshotting those conversations because they were really funny.
Yeah. Well, I jumped on that bandwagon and became one of her followers because it was so much fun. It really was quite enjoyable to see it. I know she wasn't enjoying it particularly herself and didn't want to be famous, but well.
No,
It was a lot of
she's
fun.
still refusing to interact with people, which is really funny because I think she would actually like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you then obviously you've created these sets, you created these images. Your family loved it. Your sister has this beautiful. Your sister and your brother-in-law have this beautiful memory of their maternity shoot. But you then took it a step further. You said, and you kind of went into
Yeah, I
trying
made
to
a
go
video.
viral with them, right?
Yeah, I made a TikTok video just to experiment because I always think it's about like I'm not really interested in being an influencer. I
Mm-hmm.
just don't I don't think it's for me. But I am interested in figuring out how platforms work. And
Right.
so TikTok is a platform that I hadn't really spent any time on. I had 100 followers on TikTok. And so I custom made some videos to try to appeal to the TikTok audience. And I went from 100 followers to 100,000 followers in just a couple days. In contrast, I went up by 500 followers on Instagram, and I went up by 100 followers on Facebook. And keep in mind, on Facebook, I have 350,000 followers. On Instagram, I have 100,000 followers. And even that, like, I wasn't able to reach any new people
Yeah.
because of the algorithms. Whereas TikTok's algorithm is really optimized these days for growth. I don't know if it actually is sustainable in the long term. I don't know if you really build community and following in the same way that you do on other platforms. But it does seem like a really good time to get onto TikTok if you have time to experiment with it. I've been actually thinking of like repurposing old content and readapting it to TikTok just to get the follower count up. But I don't know how to explain this. It just feels a little pointless. Like, why do I need more views and more followers?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I do think that there is value in social proof to have high numbers, high statistical numbers on your ability to reach people, and I think it's important to be able to prove that. So I do think that over the next couple months, at some point, I'm really going to have to double down and take the time to spend some time on TikTok instead of playing with my podcast, which I'm very deeply enjoying.
Yeah. I mean, you've never been one, although you've always been very successful in all the social platforms, you've never really just been chasing the numbers. It doesn't do you any good just to chase numbers. You want to have great engagement and a great community. But you're definitely shown that TikTok is something that at the moment is a very interesting platform for many of us. It started off as me being worried about what my kids were up to and what they were looking at, to now looking at it from a marketing perspective and thinking, what is the opportunities here, and what audience can we reach? But ultimately, why do we want to reach that audience, and is it the right one?
Yeah.
No point just getting the numbers if we can't talk to the right people for the right reasons. So you've got the podcast. Let's remind people where they can find the podcast. Now I'll certainly put it in the show description so they can find it there. It's Impact Everywhere.
Impacteverywhere.org. And and another project that I'm working on right now that maybe could be interesting to involve some of the viewers is called The Other Heroes. And so I've been collecting footage, clips from all over the world to make one big compilation video to show how the world came together during the time of COVID-19. And I have 50 clips from 30 different countries. And I'm really trying to paint a global story of what it looks like to go through coronavirus that isn't healthcare focused and that tells a unifying story. And so, we're still looking for new countries. So if there's anyone who wants to participate or nominate someone or send a story in, just go to theotherheroes.com. There's The Other Heroes on Instagram. We've just started sharing like a couple features of the different people that are coming on board. And it's just like another little heartwarming attempt to use stories for good and to lift people's spirits.
I'll definitely make sure to put those in the show notes when we're finished. And are you finished with the maternity shoot? Is that moment getting close?
Yeah. I think she's supposed to be giving birth in a couple days, maybe, or weeks. Right. Who knows? I don't know how this thing works. I think it just comes when it comes. So I don't think you get a say in it.
Well, give her all our love and our best wishes when that does come. I'm sure we'll see the baby photos at some point. I can only imagine, or I can't even imagine what you and your mother and family are going to come up with for the baby shoot. That's going to be interesting.
I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it yet, so they don't even want to tell us the name of the baby. So I guess it'll all come in good time.
Yeah, it's always worth having a nice surprise. So you're finished with that. You're working on the podcast. You're working on this video project for the COVID. What else? You got anything else lined up in the near future?
Nope, that is it. I have zero big plans going. I've actually turned down jobs that are for like different trade shows and conferences because I just don't want to waste my time and energy on something that is likely going to not come through.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements. I'm helping people with narratives. I'm getting into the startup space. I'm getting into the impact investing space. So I'm actually really looking for different applications of art that extend and transcend beyond just like, oh, I made a thing that you can buy. Because I do feel like there's an entire opportunity that's being lost right now. in most of these conversations. We talk about innovation and we talk about, divergent thinking and coming up with unique ideas and the fear of failure, but like we don't like creatives are the ones who have those superpowers of adaptability, of seeing the world from different perspectives, of transposing themselves in different ways. And I just don't think it's being utilized. So I'm trying to create the case studies for that.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know that whatever you get up to, we will watch with great enjoyment and can't wait to see what happens. We're gonna finish, but there is one comment come in that I have to share with you. There's a comment. It says, "I'm very deeply enjoying your podcast too," and that is from a gentleman called Chris McCaskill. Thank you, Baldy. We both miss you. Hopefully, we get to see you soon, and hope you're well. A very special person in both our lives. So that was a nice comment from Chris there, who's obviously enjoying your podcast, which is great.
Amazing. Yeah. He has so much time to kill every day. He goes so much exercising and he's always listening to something. Yeah. So I'm glad that he's taking the time to listen to mine out of like the zillion other podcasts in the world.
Well, hopefully he'll listen to mine as well at some point when we launch.
There you go.
In the coming days. And it's interesting, both you and Chris can talk to each other as fellow TED talkers, right? Now that you both have done one of those, that's pretty cool as well.
TEDx's.
Yeah, TEDx's indeed. Ben, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I wish we could have done this in person, but obviously we can't. But I'm grateful for the time you've given us today to have this chat, and hopefully we will do it in person when it's safe to do so, wherever that finds us in the world.
Yeah, well, you stay safe. Thanks for your time too. Sorry for the power failure.
It's just one of those things you have to solve. It's another little engineering thing that happens, but you're the first guest I've had where the power's gone down, so you have that title.
You're the first too.
So folks, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate your support for the channel. You can always show your support by hitting the subscribe button and the little bell notification. That way, as I say, you will get notified about all the shows we have here on SmugMug Live. Thank you again to Ben, our guest. Thank you to everyone who's been viewing. Stay safe wherever you are, and we'll see you here next time on SmugMug Live. Thank you so much.